I make a video on YouTube, so
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. It's fine. Two of us.
just to make our memorize.
Yes. Memory.
Yeah.
Up in northern Australia, where the fire regimes had become quite late and burning hot. As you can see from this map, the fire in Australia generally occurs mostly in the northern savanna regions. As you can see up here, we've got very minimal fires in the south through displacement of people from country and different land management practices. And we're starting to see really severe wildfires occurring on a regular basis, which isn't good, as most of you know, for the ecosystem. And basically a savanna fire management program was put in the dry season and focusing on early... In some areas there's only 16% more fires, so they're generally around the areas where they're quite a lot of people, where there's gamba and all sorts of other issues. So NAFI was, as I mentioned, an important part of this solution. So primarily it's all fundamentally down to land management, basically themselves. So the MATs help develop, the land managers use them to develop their fire management plans so that they can better mitigate fire. And so they look at the maps, they make their plans, then they go out and burn, usually because they're large properties, they'll burn using helicopters, then they'll come back and they'll look at the maps, they'll look at the hot spots, they'll look at the mapping, and they detect the gaps in the burns that they've done, and then make a new plan and then go back out and fill in those gaps. Landsat and Sentinel-2, which basically gives us a bird's eye view over the large vast landscapes that we need to map. So these satellites provide us with more than the eye can see. The image that you can see on the left is looking straight, if you were sitting on the satellite looking straight down at a burnt area, that's what it would look like to the naked eye, but running it, using the different sensors on those satellites and running it through algorithms, you can better draw out those edges of the fire lines, and you can see sort of through some smoke and cloud, but not all. Most of the NAFI mapping that we provide on the general NAFI platform is what we call MODIS data used from the MODIS satellite, and that's at 250 metres resolution. The Landsat is at 28, and Sentinel-2 can go as low as 10, but we map it at 20 metres. And this is an example of what the difference between the moderate resolution and the fine scale mapping imagery looks like. So the image on the left is your MODIS. You can see it's really not exactly clear on the exact fire edge of where that fire occurred. You can see the same pattern where the burn has occurred, but when you're looking at the fine scale mapping with the Landsat image on the right, you really see the definite edge of that fire where it's been, where the little gaps in the burn have occurred, which enables you to have a better idea of where you need to revisit and where your weaknesses might be at the end of the year when wildfires occur. When I mentioned that we get MODIS going over twice a day in some areas, once in others, it's because it's got a wider swath, so it enables it to cover a larger area, and it doesn't need to circle the Earth as many times to revisit that same point on Earth. Whereas your more fine scale, higher resolution satellites, they've generally got a thinner width or swath, and so they have to go around more often. So as I mentioned, MODIS goes around twice. Landsat, there's a couple of satellites, so we can get coverage on the same spot every 8 days. Sentinel-2, we get every 5 days. So that's been really quite handy. It's been a really good tool to use for our fine-scale mapping products. So the hotspots, I've got 6 listed here. I think we actually use 8 now, different satellites for hotspot data. The satellites that we use have heat sensors on them, and they sort of basically detect the difference between areas. So it'll detect when there's heat in one area surrounded by cool, and then it creates a point, records the data, and sends it back to Earth for us to put on our maps. One of the problems with that, though, is it's not always fire. Sometimes it'll detect a change in hot rocks or mud flats, so that's where it is really important to know your area. If the fire's taken off, you know, it's a bit late in the day to react.
Okay, you may not be able to get the NAFI app if you've got an app store from another country. Give it a try and see. I can't. But if you want to view it, you can. I'm sure Cameron or Kerry or somebody else will let you have it.
Yeah, sure. Rangelands on this side, so it's just nice to see the way that works. The one with the tools. Let's try this one.
They have a number of people that do the mapping, like Kerry. How many people do mapping? Probably
only 3.
3 people do the mapping for all of Australia. And then there's a number of software engineers as well. I think there's 2 software engineers, or 3, and programmers. So there's a number of different roles. There's software engineers that keep the website itself ticking over, and then there's the people supplying the data that actually goes into into the site itself. So you need more than just people doing the mapping. It does need somebody to run a website. Yes?
And then we can look at how we can maybe look at our data sets that we have, sort of try to apply the same manual process that they're using for the mapping, then we use our own.
And yeah, basically to enter the website, you can either go in via clicking on the map, and this is that map that I said explains, shows you what your current cloud cover is like. That's updated every 10 minutes. It's taken from the satellite, a weather satellite, the Himawari one that provides us the 10-minute hotspots. So you can enter, if you know where you want to be, you just click on that part of the map, or you go in through Fire Maps tab. We've got preset areas, which also, when you click on these little triangles, drops down some more preset areas. And as you'll see, we can also create your own areas so that you've got your own shortcut. That's wrong with the data, so sometimes, especially with those...
Of their helicopter routes and things prior to them going out and doing the work. So they get these maps to see and plan where they're going to do their helicopter runs for the coming year.
You can draw your own boundaries and do a fire history for that particular area, or with a report with a map, like you can see on the front, on this top page here, with a graph, and also a table of area burnt according to the months or years. So yeah, it just collates it all in an instant for you. You can use that, and you can copy it, you know, screenshot it, put it in your reports, or just present it as it is.
Okay, thank you, Terry, for time. I just wonder how to elaborate between fire map and wildlife monitoring.
Yes.
Because when we doing wildlife monitoring, we had struggling in cost, time,
Yes.
and then the fast area. So for example, when we going to one area that we already mapped before from office, and then that area is burning,
Yes.
so the wildlife is zero. So there is any opportunity from NAFI that's considered for us that working while in wildlife conservation to handle it. So when we work and then we use NAFI map, it could be maybe when we making a planning for wildlife monitoring to one area, for example, and then it could be the answer is we can see the animals. There is any considered that use in here by maybe an environment agency that's considered to conservation for here?
So adding your wildlife data into the fire maps and that sort of thing?
No, I mean there is agency in here that use your data to conduct their planning.
Yes, yeah, for sure. So basically with anything to do with fire planning within the areas, they'll use NAFI or download the NAFI data into their own mapping systems, where they can then, so by downloading all the burnt area mapping, they can then put it into the GIS software and then add their own layers, and with all their own data about where animals are, or plants of significance, or sites of significance, or that sort of thing. So then they create their own maps and push them out as geotiffs or whatever for people to use in the field, then combine it with apps like Avenza or other GPS tracking devices, so when you're in the field you can add to that data.
Older than 10 years or unburnt, then they plan their survey efforts to go and look for those birds in those areas because they know that's where it's going to be. So the data sort of does fall in line with wildlife management in terms of species sorts of things. And you went there. Jeremy's now talking about developing, they call it in Australia, nature repair markets, but it's not nature repair per se. So looking at particular fire metrics for particular plants and animals that need particular fire regimes. And if we can map those fire regimes and show that you're now increasing habitats for particular animals or plants, that maybe we can develop a market to sell those.
In their office, they'll create maps using the fire data, using all the different layers, vegetation, wildlife, etc. And then they can push that data to the rangers in the field. Now with the advances of satellite access to Starlink and so forth, little mobile, vehicles become little mobile bases, and within an hour someone can have updated maps and you can transfer data to the base and back and have ongoing interaction that way as well, which is really good. But yeah, there's a whole world of software and programs and capabilities, but pretty much NAFI is just about fire. We are looking at incorporating weather layers into NAFI, hopefully in the future, because that's really important for how the fire is likely, predicting how the fire might behave. So wind, temperature, humidity. But yeah, it's just it's never ending, the tools that you can add and incorporate. It's just resource availability and maintenance is a huge thing. So it's one thing, like, to get different tools and so forth going, but then you run into issues. So for example, with the mobile app, we thought, right, we'll outsource that, because with the resources that we have, we can only manage the website. But we had a huge call for a mobile app where people could access NAFI in the field, on the go. And so we outsourced it, but then that company no longer had their app people when we needed to update things. So we were reliant then on the outsource. So then that's why we've brought that in-house, increasing our capability there to manage it ourselves. But things go wrong, things advance, updates happen, new phones, all sorts. It's really quite full on and ever changing. So a lot of adaptive management. But yeah, just fundamentally trying to determine what's most useful for the broad user base.
Outra coisa interessante, percebi que em termos de densidade populacional, o norte da Austrália é menor.